Hello and welcome, fellow travelers. You're listening to the Travel Inspired Podcast, or hopefully watching it on our YouTube channel, Creating Magic Vacations. We are your hosts and travel agents, Rob and Kerri Stuart, coming to you from the CMV studio in beautiful Orlando, Florida. This is show number 161.
And you're in for a treat because on today's episode, we are going to talk about the top 5 reasons you should take an Alaskan cruise tour, which is a bucket list trip for the majority of travelers out there.
Yes, it is. We're also going to tell you about the 2 cruise lines that we recommend specifically for this type of trip. Now, if this is not your first time listening to this show, we want to thank you for your patience because between our crazy travel schedule and the fact that every month this summer has been a record sales month for our travel agency, Creating Magic Vacations, we just didn't get the shows done that we wanted to. So again, thanks for your patience.
But we have been to a lot of really cool places.
We have traveled a lot.
And we have had a lot of house projects.
Yes.
So
and
yes.
House guests.
And some house guests.
We see you.
But we really had planned to do this show as soon as we got back from doing the land portion of a cruise tour in Alaska in early June. But wow, the summer has flown by. But moving forward, it is our mission to air a new episode every week, just like we do with our other show, Disney Travel Secrets.
Here are just a few of our upcoming show topics, and one we're very excited about because in about a week from today, as of this recording, we're sailing on the inaugural sailing of Royal Caribbean's Star of the Seas.
And a very special thank you to our rep, Amy, for inviting us on this very special cruise. I'm super excited about it.
It's going to be fun. We're also doing a show about experiencing a dude ranch in Montana that is a very, very short drive to Yellowstone. That was a cool trip.
And that one was super, super special. Plus, we have airline tips, cruising from Europe's ports in 2026. We know a lot of you are planning on that and so much more. So Make sure that you are subscribed.
Creating Magic Vacations is one of, if not the only travel agency in the country where we have a partnership with a specific military charity.
And that charity is Folds of Honor. And since 2007, Folds of Honor has been providing life-changing scholarships to the spouses and children of America's fallen or disabled military. And now their mission expands to families of America's first responders.
As a matter of fact, last month we were out with some friends at the Enchanted Rose over at Disney's Grand Floridian Resort for a birthday monorail crawl. And we happened to be wearing our Folds of Honor t-shirts that day.
And here's what was really cool is we were talking to one of the managers, Brianna, and she saw our shirts and she said that her and her sister were both Folds of Honor scholarship recipients.
I know that was the first time we had met someone who had one of those scholarships. And again, we were just out with our friends. We basically have 2 parts to this mission. The first is to help military spouses build a successful business as a travel agent, a business that they can take with them anywhere, no matter where their family might be deployed to.
Now, the unemployment rate among military spouses is over 5 times the national average. Why? Because they get transferred, and this happens all the time, and they're hard to employ because they're moving around so much. And our second mission is to raise money towards scholarships through things like special group trips we put together and some merchandise where a donation is paid to Folds of Honor from those profits generated from the trips and the merch.
If you or someone you know is a military spouse and loves travel, go to the CMV Heroes Project at cmvheroesproject.com to learn more about it. And then you can get on my schedule to answer any questions that you may have about our program.
So when one of the CMV Heroes agents comes on board, a portion of their startup investment is donated back to Folds of Honor. We are super proud of that, and we have really big goals in 2025 and beyond.
And now on to the rest of the show. We are coming to the end of the summer travel season, and specifically the Alaska season, which typically runs from like May through September, with the peak months being June, July, and August.
And most people, when visiting Alaska for the first time, they will do it as a cruise. And that's what we did way back in 2005. We cruised on Holland America round trip from Seattle.
Since then, we also cruised on the Disney Wonder, that was out of Vancouver round trip. And we love Alaska, and we sold cruises there since probably the early 2010s, I would guess. And we knew about cruise tours, and we've sold them, but we had never done one. Now, to be clear, we still have not technically. We have done each component separately. I can't wait to combine them maybe next year.
Yeah, no, that would be super fun. So even though we are trained on these cruise tour products, there is nothing, though, like actually being there and experiencing it.
I think most people like ourselves, we thought, okay, Alaska cruise, we are good to go. That's all we need. Or maybe that the additional 3, 4, or 5 days on land won't be worth the additional cost. I'm going to tell you to truly experience and see Alaska, you have to include the land portion.
Now, to help you understand why, we have put together our top 5 reasons. And so earlier this May, we experienced a 5-night tour of Alaska on the interior. And it was your typical adventure that if you were getting off a northbound ship, you would start in Seward and then you'd go to Anchorage, Talkeetna, and then end up in Fairbanks. So this was pretty standard, or you would do the reverse.
Now for this, we highly recommend, and we're actually probably going to mention it a couple times, do the land tour portion before the actual cruise. And that advice doesn't just come from us, but our friend who's been a longtime guide with Royal Caribbean.
And a big reason is this. After this very busy on-the-go tour, you are going to look forward to just relaxing on the ship.
We totally understood this, and we found out how intense your days will be on the interior, the land portion part of the trip.
Yeah, our guide was very candid with us too and said, you don't want to be coming off a 7-night cruise, tired, or worse yet, hungover, which she has seen many times. And then you end up doing a pretty intensive tour where you move from hotels every day. This is good advice.
Yes, that's why we totally recommend doing the land portion first.
So we were almost constantly on the move and busy on the land portion. It was totally worth it. The days will start early. Now, they do move your luggage for you from hotel to hotel, but you still have to have it out for pickup, usually 6:30 or 7 a.m.
I would say for this particular trip, we pretty much packed like pros. Carry on only.
We did good.
Something knows that we have not done one completely on the same trip like we are recommending that you do. But again, like I said, we've done both components separately. Our first ever cruise was an Alaska cruise in 2005 on Holland America. And very few people start with that as their first cruise. It's usually, cruising out of Florida and hitting the Bahamas, the Caribbean. And even though I lived in Tampa at that time, I had never even seen a cruise ship till we boarded the ship in Seattle.
And then in 2023, we went back to Alaska on the Disney Wonder. And it was amazing because we did concierge and it was such a big difference. I loved that cruise.
Yes. And having now done, the land portion of the Royal Caribbean Cruise Tour, we now totally get the experience of the Alaska interior. It's life-changing for a lot of people. I mean, seeing Denali for the first time was just a wow moment.
Yeah, well, and riding a train from Talkeetna to Denali in a glass dome train is hard to describe. You were literally in the middle of nowhere for most of the ride. I loved it.
It was. The typical trip like this will consist of either a 4 or 5 days of touring. Then you're going to get on the 7-night cruise portion of the trip. Now,
with the cruise being either a north to south or the opposite, here's another thing to add. When you're down in Vancouver, you could do a train ride on the Rocky Mountaineer, and you could go like Calgary to Vancouver to see Glacier National Park in Banff, or you could do the opposite, depending upon where you go. So if you really want to extend your trip and you have like maybe 14, 15 days, that's another way to just kind of plus it up.
Our tour portion was the 5-night option. And it started in Anchorage and then on to Seward, Talkeetna, Denali, and then we ended in Fairbanks.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the reverse. So normally this would be if you're doing Vancouver up to Seward, then you would follow in our footsteps starting in Seward.
On our first full day, we, along with 38 other travel agents, we boarded our bus and met our driver that would be with us for the rest of the tour. Ironically, we learned that he had lived and worked in St. Louis, like I did. And we had a lot of things in common, some of the restaurants. So that was pretty cool.
I know. You know how to make a friend everywhere you go. So our first stop was Seward, and this was a great start to the trip. Plus, we found probably the most authentic Alaska bar of the entire trip, and it was a bar called the Yukon Bar. It's over 80 years old. It was like stepping back in time, and there were so many locals there, and we're talking like at 11 in the morning. They were getting their drink on.
That is true. One of my favorite excursion was the boat ride that we, almost like a ferry type boat that we saw. I mean, we saw wildlife from the beginning of this trip. The first being a pair of, or maybe even 2 or 3, humpback whales. I had never seen one in person, much less being this close to these huge animals.
Yeah, the ones I like is we also saw some sea otters. We saw seals that were just lounging on the shore. Of course, you see bald eagles when you're in Alaska. Just very cool experience seeing the animals out in the wild.
So for pretty much everyone going on this trip, Denali is what they were excited about. And the best place to see that is Talkeetna. We stayed at the Talkeetna Alaskan Lodge. That was, I think, of the places we stayed, that was our favorite. And it wasn't just the room per se. The rooms were pretty typical in all these different cities. It really was the lodge itself.
Yeah, the rooms, I think they were modern,
Yeah.
but really it was the lodge. They have this huge lobby with floor-to-ceiling windows that face several mountains, including Denali. They had a huge deck right outside, which made for great photo ops, which I loved.
We did a lot of those. They also had the best bar area, which was right next to the lobby. It was a fun place to just hang out and still be able to see the mountain, which is exactly where we went the next day.
Well, one of the things is that's unique about this lodge that other lodges in the area don't offer is the downtown area of Talkeetna is super easy to get to from this lodge because it is only a short 5-minute shuttle bus ride from this lodge. And it was definitely worth going to. We had a blast just walking around this little town. We had breakfast at a cute little place. And this was one of the highlights for our trip.
The next day was the domed car train ride from Talkeetna to Denali.
Yeah, and this really is about as remote as you can get.
Yes.
So even though we actually went into Denali National Park, we kind of drove through it. We didn't get to see too much of it because it was raining. We didn't even get off the bus when we did that part of the tour.
We did not. The only animal we saw was a moose, not meese. We only saw one, so it was a moose. That was on our way out of the park. If you're doing the cruise tour, though, you will spend more time actually in the park.
Yeah, what I kind of liked, though, was, and this was something that was super unique, is when you're on these cruise tours, if they see an animal, the bus driver just stopped. He actually went in reverse and was trying to make sure we all saw it.
And almost hit the bus behind us.
We did not almost hit the bus behind us. But these are some of the things that when you're in the interior, it's different because you're going to see a lot more of the animals. But the bus drivers, they're trained to look for these animals and they're very serious. As soon as somebody says moose, they slow down the bus or slam on the brakes and we all start looking.
Yes.
That was so fun.
So the next day was our trip to Fairbanks. And I think the highlight for that portion of the trip was the boat ride. And then we stopped in an authentic village and we did a cookout followed by a show, which was really old time. It reminded me 1800s probably, vaudeville, although vaudeville's in the 1900s. Either way, you get my drift.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the top 5 reasons to do a land cruise tour for Alaska. And yes, the combo, not one over the other.
So reason number 1 really is the wildlife viewing from Alaska cruise tours. Both the cruise and the land portion offer some of the world's best wildlife watching opportunities. Yes, you'll have chances to see humpback whales, orcas, sea otters, and seals from the ship. But doing the land portion, you'll see so much more like brown bears, moose. If there's a whole bunch of them together, we call them meese, and also caribou.
No, but let's talk about the marine wildlife, though. It is spectacular. I mean, you can watch these pods of whales, and we do recommend you do an excursion if you want to get up close because they kind of chase them down. And
in a good way.
In a good way. Like they get up and so you can get a good view. But on our land tour, what I loved is we saw, they were little sea otters, right?
Yeah.
And since we were there in the spring, they had little babies. And so they were floating on their backs and they had their little baby sea otters on their tummy. And it was so close.
It was awesome.
It was so close to the ship and it was so cute. Everybody's over there. I think the ship was tilting because we were all trying to get.
Actually, it was.
Yeah. Well, and then also, let's not forget about the goats and the baby goats that we saw that were way up on the mountain. And of course, we did see moose. And, here's a couple of things. We did see some in Denali, but one of the things we did when we were in Stuart is we visited an aquarium. And so we even got to see more wildlife.
And that's a great transition to one of the top reasons to add the land portion of this is you can visit one of the most iconic national parks. And yes, we've mentioned it before, and that is Denali.
Yeah, we also visited a conservation where the animals go, they say for rehab is what. And so we did get to see bear. We got to see fox. We got to see some other things that we didn't get to see out in the wild.
And the wolf.
Yeah, and the wolf. Yes, there were two.
Two wolves.
Two, yeah. We did get super lucky with the weather though, because I remember we were in the airport and a guy said, he's like, well, every time I've been to Denali, it's so cloudy, it's raining. I've never been able to see the mountain range. And we had clear views. Yep. The other thing was you do get an extra chance on that train ride. And so if you didn't know, Denali is the largest mountain in North America. Now, I grew up in Denver where we have 14,000 footers, and those pale in comparison to this over 20,000 foot high mountain. I'm just telling you, I kept looking at it and I was speechless. It was spectacular.
Reason number 2, you have to see the glaciers in person. And there are very few places on Earth that you get as close to actually being next to the glaciers as in Alaska. Cruise ships can navigate right up to the tidewater glaciers like those in Glacier Bay. And you'll hear these giant cracks. And sometimes you'll see it on one of the documentaries. You have no idea how loud that is in person. And you might even see house-sized chunks of ice crash into the sea. It's just, again, it's one of those, I'd say it, if you go, you know, because if you don't go, you don't know. You see it on TV and you're like, it looks pretty cool. But seeing it in person was just incredible.
Yeah, I still remember that from our first cruise at Hubbard Glacier.
Mm-hmm.
And those are also your sea days when you're doing the glaciers are perfect, relaxing days on the ship because you can just, go out on deck, enjoy a cup of coffee. The ship's just going to circle around. Keep in mind that on the land portion, though, you're not going to see as many glaciers, but what we did see were a lot of like the lakes where the glacier water goes in, and it was so stunning. Alaska is just so beautiful.
Reason number 3 is cruising through the fjords. The Inside Passage offers some of the most dramatic coastal scenery you're going to see any place on the planet. You'll cruise through the narrow fjords with huge mountains and pristine forests and cascading waterfalls. And the landscape is always changing. That means you have a ton of photo ops.
Yeah, and I love it too because you have mountains on both sides. And this is why we recommend you always cruise in and out of Vancouver when you can. And if you are prone to seasickness, the Inside Passage is very, very calm.
Yeah.
Okay, reason number 4 is the authentic cultural immersion. And this is really important for some people that when they're traveling, they like to really get into the culture. And on an Alaska cruise tour, you can do this because you get opportunities, not just in these cruise ports, but once you're on land, you can really get into some native Alaska culture experiences like we did when we had to stop in Anchorage.
Yeah. And you'll visit communities on your cruise portion like Ketchikan and Juneau, where you can see the traditional totem poles, maybe cultural demonstrations, and also purchase authentic indigenous art, which is all over the place. But one of the highlights that was part of our land tour was, again, we talked about this, the ferry boat ride in Fairbanks. That was just really cool. We thought it was going to be completely different.
I know. No, we thought it was really well done. And initially we were just like, oh, do we have to do this ferry boat thing? It's probably just going to be a bunch of like drunk people going down the river. It was not at all. And what we did is we learned about their heritage, what it's like to live in that part of the world up in Fairbanks, and then several of their traditions, which was neat.
Exactly, including the family that had the sled dogs, and they did a demonstration. And of course, there wasn't any snow. And so what they done is they took the engine out of an ATV, and the sled dogs were pulling the girl on the ATV. And I can't remember her name, but her mom was like the most famous Iditarod sled racer.
Yeah, I think she was like the first woman award-winning.
We should have probably put that in the notes, but we didn't.
We did not.
They even had a float plane take off right next to us and do a flyby because float planes up in the Alaska Territory is very, very common.
Yeah, I felt like we learned a lot that day. It was fantastic. Yeah. Okay, and reason number 5, this is a really good one, because as travel agents, we often get asked to put together a land-only Alaska trip with hotels, the drive routes, the tours. But with a cruise tour, you can adventure without all those logistic hassles. Let somebody else do it for you. Alaska is big.
And yes, Alaska's remote wilderness can be challenging to navigate independently, but the cruise tours handle all of those logistics while still delivering the authentic adventure. You really do get the best of both worlds. Comfortable rooms and accommodations and dining while accessing incredibly remote locations that would be difficult, if not impossible, to reach on your own. Plus, expert naturalists and guides enhance every experience with their knowledge.
And we've done things on our own, and we prefer this way.
Yeah.
So think of it as the combination of comfort, accessibility, and genuine wilderness adventure. And that's what makes Alaska cruise tours appeal from everyone, whether you're a luxury traveler to serious adventurers. And they consistently rank among some of the most popular vacations. One thing to keep in mind, though, when it comes to Alaska, that it's mostly 3-star accommodations. And
Yes.
if you are trying to build this on your own, you may pick a 3-star that's actually more of like a 1.5. These cruise tour ones have been vetted.
Again, keep in mind when you're planning your cruise tour, again, 3-star accommodations for the land portion of it. Of course, you can get a giant suite on the ship itself. But there was one place we went to and we visited, and it's called Alyeska. And it is the only 5-star resort in all of Alaska. And it's the only ski resort as well.
Yeah, no, that was something that was really, really unique. This one was absolutely stunning, though.
Yep.
And if you can find a cruise tour that includes it, I would 100% recommend that one.
Yeah.
But regardless of the accommodations, you can do this nice little add-on for your adventure. And don't worry, you're not going to feel like you're camping. Some of them are going to feel a little bit more like you're just in a nice little lodge and you have the basics. It's good.
Mm-hmm. So one thing to keep in mind is that, of course, the meals are always included on your cruise portion. For the land portion, not all meals are included, which is cool because you get to go out and kind of, explore on your own. So if you're used to having everything included on your cruise, the land tour sometimes will have some dining options, just obviously not as much as the cruise.
Yeah. So what we recommend is if you want to not be stuck eating at the resort for like breakfast, maybe plan to dine on your own. Now, some of the cruise lines do offer dining plans for most meals on their tour portion, but this is why you work with a travel agent who gets to know your style of dining, because I know that one of our guides was saying, for people that don't eat a lot, they may skip breakfast. And so why include the dining plan, which always includes breakfast, and it's usually just at your resort.
For packing, pack lean. If you need to have a big piece of luggage for your cruise, keep that with just your cruise clothes and do a smaller piece of luggage that you'll be using each day on the land portion. It'll help streamline your mornings a lot.
Yeah. Also, plan on some downtime on the bus or train between the cities. There's a lot to see, and your guide is going to share information, but you're going to have plenty of time to enjoy it without someone talking the entire time. We've all been there. That's annoying.
They do pace the stops out pretty well, so you aren't on a bus for more than 2 hours at a time for the most part, based on what we experienced.
Yeah, definitely, though, make sure that the glass dome train is included. This was a highlight for me because I loved seeing the land. We went over some kind of sketch bridges. We had lunch on the train, and the views of Denali, again, we got so lucky with the weather. It was super clear, but this is a must-do for sure.
Another huge packing tip for sure, dress in layers. The weather is going to go from freezing to hot, which is typical Alaska, and do not forget your binoculars. You'll want this for the land and cruise parts.
Yeah, so most all the cruise lines offer the land and cruise itineraries.
Which means you can go super bougie and fancy, but that's her. But let's keep it within reach and a little more standard budget. Our top 2 picks for this type of a cruise tour would be Royal Caribbean and Celebrity.
Now, to be clear, Royal Caribbean did invite us on that land portion trip, but that is not why we are recommending them. Both them and their sister company called Celebrity are fabulous for many reasons.
What sets them apart, I'd say small but very important differences. The first is that both the bus driver and the guide stay with you the entire length of your trip.
Yeah, and that does not happen with other companies doing cruise tours. That fact actually surprises us because it seems so natural to have your driver and guide with you the entire trip. And then what happens is that other companies, what they do is they just hand you off to a new driver and a guide, or the driver kind of up between cities is the guide. So he's not only driving, but he's also doing some narration as well. But when you get there, then you get passed off. So they don't really get to know you.
Now, keep in mind, we're talking about just the land portion of the trip, obviously not the cruise, because they're not going to cruise with you.
No, they are not.
So the start or the end of your cruise will either be Whittier or Seward. Seward is the better port. And as they say of the weather in Whittier, it's always, never mind, we can't say that.
You can fill in the blank.
It rhymes with Whittier.
Yes, it does.
As we mentioned earlier, we 100% recommend doing this tour before the cruise. So in this case, you'll be doing a north to south cruise starting in either Seward or Whittier and ending in Vancouver, which I like the Vancouver port way more than the one in Seattle.
Oh, yeah. No, because then you get that inside passage portion as well. So highly recommend that. So is doing an Alaska cruise tour sound interesting to you and maybe something you want to put on your list for 2026 or 2027? We have a special opportunity for you to learn more. So if you're catching this in time, we are doing an exclusive special night all about Alaska cruise tours with Royal Caribbean on September 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern. So there is a link in the show description if you would like to get an invite. It's a great way for you to just learn about the experience. We have one of the top professionals who is going to be walking us through all your different options and some things that you should consider before you book that cruise. Plus, we have some special promos too.
Yes, we do.
Excited about that.
And the cruise line rep that's going to be on this cruise night with us is the same guy that came along with us. He's one that curates a lot of these different experiences. So we are excited to share that with you.
If we can help you plan your next adventure, whether it is Alaska cruise tour or anywhere in the world, please reach out to us or one of our Creating Magic Vacations travel agents. Just go to creatingmagicvacations.com and click on Plan a Vacation.
Thanks for joining us this week. Hopefully on YouTube so you can see pictures and videos of this amazing trip.
And the cute little animals.
And the cute, the mises.
Until next time, remember, never stop exploring.